So when we work with companies and teams from Mars Chocolate or IKEA, we always ask ourselves this single question: where is value next? And this question about understanding value is truly important to understand where your next playing field will be for your company. And I have to warn you not to try this at home, because if you come home tonight and you ask your partner what is your value, that will lead to very different insights and maybe not nice conversations. But for business, it's a true interesting question. And when you look at procurement's job, few are about getting good negotiations or innovative ideas, but also flexible contracts. But what I would like to look into more is how you as a procurement professional can capture and understand value. And that's a very interesting topic, because the way value is changing is different. So it was different in the past, it's different today, and that will be different in the future. And if you're going to look for value, the question is, where are you going to look? Are you going to look in different markets? Are you going to ask your clients or look at potential clients? Well, what we learned over the years is that you need to look exactly at the crossroads where technology change meets consumer change, because that's the space where new business models pop up. So for example, what we learned in the pandemic, that, for example, technology like your Fitbit can help you to understand to walk more and be more active because you only spend time at home. But that will result in maybe using more different sneakers, but also complete new concepts. So specifically when you look at that crossroads, that's where innovation and especially also new value is happening. And I would like to take you through some of those ideas. And what you see, if your business model sits in the now on the left-hand side, and you look at the edge of innovation, then the question is, what is the shift that you're going to make? So we learned by studying multiple business models throughout the globe that you see that a business model can actually be seen as an organism that is changing over time. And we identified 6 patterns to understand how value is changing over time as a result of technology and changing customer behavior. So for some you might be familiar with, but it's interesting to look a little bit deeper into a few of them. So it shifts from products to services, it shifts from shareholder to stakeholder, but also from analog to digital, from pipeline to platform, from linear to exponential, and also from linear to circular. So I would like to look at 2 of those shifts, and the first one I would like to show you and talk about is the platform shift. That actually the shift from a single pipeline model into a platform. And when you think, for example, about a specific product that you push in the market with your company, that was used to be designed as a linear model coming from all the left of the resources into a specific value proposition, pushing into these channels. And what you see right now, as a result of technology, you're able to match supply and demand. So therefore, the value doesn't sit so much in the production of a good sitting in some warehouse to be bought by clients, but more about the interaction between those customer segments. So let's have a look what that would look like, for example, in the care industry in Europe. So if you look at the care industry, the current way, if people need services in terms of health at home, then it would take few days to get an appointment, and she will go visit those potential clients. And they need to understand what they need in terms of services. You can only agree with them, appointment 9 to 5, you have long waiting times, it's a manual process, no insights. So you can argue, but it's a linear model that creates value or has been value created for many years before. But the question now is, the CEO, Martin, he said, okay, are we organizing for our clients or are we organizing for ourselves? And his company called Sensire, he realized that a few years ago, the current business model that they have will not last for the next few years to come. So he said, we need to change, but if you look at my company as a very big ship, where everybody understands exactly how this traditional way of value creation is created, we cannot sustain that specific model and that big ship anymore. So if you remember, the crossroads is where those new business models and ideas pop up. We looked into the last mile delivery solutions to those platforms. And what is interesting is that that specific platform already solved problems in terms of logistics to ship on-demand services with goods and services anytime, anywhere. And if you use that concept into a new industry, take the care industry, then you can solve the problem to match services and products for these people at home. So the business case was to save a 30 million bureaucracy that could not be spent directly to those patients that needed that care. By introducing that platform, we might think that would be possible. But remember the ship, Martin said, we're not able to execute this inside our company because our company is too big, too large, and we have an old-fashioned mindset. So they said the board is also slow in decision-making, and we need to make haste in order to come with such a solution. So here you can see clearly of why you need to move outside of that box, because on the right-hand side, you see your existing value creation, your existing company, the linear model for the care industry. And on the left-hand side, it was more interesting to understand where can we search for new value spaces, a way to connect a platform outside the industry into the care industry. So Martin said, this care platform, we would like to use to connect those services and these products. And let's have a look what that looks like. So the new way, the concept is called VIV. And you see that from that platform, we would like to connect the caregivers and the caretakers. So here, if you are a caregiver, you can identify your skills, what you're good at, and the care request, the care askers or patients, they can identify what they need, and the algorithm, the platform, will create the value to match those two. So here you see the AI will make the match. So based on availability, education, zones, customer type, you see that those caregivers and askers are matched. And this job was now done by almost 80 people, and it cost around 18 million. So you see that this platform notion is connecting the caregivers and the caretakers, and that's the value that's created in that platform. So we're not talking about a single linear business model anymore, but we are talking about a platform. So when you think about what is the value that is created here, then we see it is not about a software project that was done in this company or a license that was acquired, but it's about a platform, and the software would cost maybe 2 million as a one-time investment. But actually the platforms provides a solution where this company can save 18 million and at the same time can spend 18 million to deliver more care to their patients. So what I find interesting is when you think about platform models, you might think about Uber and not being the best solution because they are filling maybe the pockets of the founders and the shareholders. But this model can be also used to understand a very different way of value creation. Then we learn it's not about the software cost, but it's about the value that's created in the platform. And time by time, we need to explain these people that it's not about software, but we are building a Tesla for you, and we teach you how to drive that Tesla. So enough about platforms. I would like to also show you a little bit more on this services shift. And that has emerged from delivering products to services. And what you see here is in services, it's not about the product. You won't see a product here. It's about the problem you solve for customers, and you charge based on what they are willing to pay for that. So let's look at a very typical Dutch example. So we are here in Amsterdam, and this is Dirk from Delft. And he, as a student, he learned that it was not about the product, it's not about the bike. He said, you know, if you're a student and you figure out that your tire is flat, let's see if the next slide will pop up. Yeah, so you will see your tire is flat, and then you go to the bike repair shop, but then you maybe need to wait for 2 weeks, and you have costs because they also repair the lights. We said, that's not my problem, because what I want is to have access to a bike and to be able to bike. So it's not about the bike. And when I was in conversation with him on stage, I said, okay, so who is considering to either have a subscription versus acquiring a bike? And he said, well, if I asked 1,000 people, maybe 5. He said, because people would only consider those new services when they figure out that their bike is broken. And that's a very interesting element. I come back to that. Let's see that next slide. So we see it's not about access. It's about access. It's not about ownership. Ownership, 500 euros one time, and access, 20 euros in a subscription model. And it's the way we visualized that business model. Another concept that is popping up because technology is emerging and able to deliver these kind of services is furniture as a service. So you don't buy this furniture anymore, but you get a subscription on those furniture, and that means that you don't have this capital expenditure anymore. And this company, it's called Nornorm, and that is a subsidiary or investment idea started at IKEA. And what is interesting is now that as a business owner, you don't have to have that furniture yourself anymore, which also results into a value that was normally about 50,000 to acquire that furniture. But now, having access, you get this monthly subscription of only 2,000 euros. And remember what I told you about the swap feeds, this bike concept. They understand that model as well, that not many people would consider this if their furniture was not broken. And what they learned, they said, okay, if you would like to acquire that model, it's not that you need to start this from scratch. We can also look at your company and we will buy and take over the furniture that you already have, right? So you see that in those services models, companies learn and offer different services. A last model I would like to show you is about the device as a service. So now you see that the device as a service, the company is called Everphone from Germany. And what they say is it's not about the device, because the value sits in the fact that you, as a business owner or a company, need to make sure that security is taken care of, you get the latest licenses to operate, make sure that you have the connection, that people have their individual preferences. So they said we can just take that away because we will offer that as a service. So if your phone is gone, they will replace that immediately, and you as a business owner don't have the hassle. And at the same time, they will keep those phones into the system, and phones that you don't use do not sit in a drawer anymore. So also other companies now see that when Media for Care, they said, we now need 4 times more devices, and such a company can now deliver that instantly, and there's no hassle of ownership anymore. And when you look at the value creation, it's not about ownership, for example, for an iPhone of 1,200 euros, but it's access where you pay a fixed subscription a month. And I thought as a business owner, this might be an interesting model. So they asked me to give all the information of all the phones we already have. They acquired the phone, and they said, okay, we have a deposit for your monthly subscription fee. And therefore, anytime when the phone is broken or new models will come out, it's these guys that will manage that for them. So I was wondering, what is this notion around this value creation, and why are these services so popular at the moment? Well, you see that customers expect results over ownership. So being an owner of a bike doesn't make too much sense anymore. You would like to have access and a bike that works every single time. Another reason is that these product features in the past, those were very important, but right now it's the problem that is solved. And this is the nest. The only thing what you would like to understand is the temperature and to fix it higher or lower. But anything else in terms of product features does not solve the problem for you. And the other thing is, what is important is the pay for usage. So in terms of the furniture, in terms of the bikes, in terms of the devices, you don't look at a capital expenditure anymore, but it can be just part of your operations expenses. So what we learned here also in that services shift, it's two things. One is a product doesn't solve your problem, but if you are able to solve a problem, then people are willing to pay for that a very different way. So the value perception is very different. So it's not about the product cost, it's about the problem that is solved for customers. So one more thing, I think it's very interesting for you as a procurement professional to understand that value is changing as a result of technology and changing customer behavior. And therefore we see that actually all the rise of technology and the internet makes these different models possible. And therefore this notion of a linear approach in terms of value, that's not true anymore. And it takes time also to understand what is the value when it comes to products, to services, or to products versus, for example, those platforms. And what we learned as my company, we realize now that more and more clients ask us not to come with an hourly rate and with a project, but they said, we would like to just look into ventures, because a venture is representing a type of business or an amount of business, and that's what we want you to hire for. So even we were studying all these patterns, all these models, and now we need to change our model ourselves. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Patrick. Please join me for a Q&A. So it's not about the bike, it's about cycling.
But you know, like, isn't it weird that, I mean, this bike is here for years and years and years, and not the bike itself has changed, but the model has changed, and with the app, you can have access, right?
Yeah, but I love the example because it makes it so clear. You're totally right. It is not about the bike. So it's about results over ownership. I love that quote. So why is the notion of value so important for the world of procurement?
Yeah, you know, when also we are dealing with procurement officers globally for the projects that we do, you see that 80% is really looking at, okay, so what is the hourly rate? And can we get a discount on your hourly rate? What I would rather like to have is a discussion about what is the value that's created, so that they understand for their company that value is changing, and to really have a conversation about that specific value. And it doesn't sit in an hourly rate, it doesn't sit in the number of hours spent. So I would like that they can have a conversation at least about what is the actual value that's delivered.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent task for everyone who's looking at this session. Think about what is the value. Awesome. So we have some questions coming in, and the first one is from Slav Vasilevsky. Thank you so much for sharing your question. When do you see a B2C volume of disruption coming to B2B space? And why is there a lag, do you think?
Yeah, it's weird that we always tend to feel a difference between B2B and B2C.
Why is that weird?
Because I acquire those Everphone services as a business owner, but at the same time I have my private phone also with this company. Yeah. So I'm the same person, but sometimes business to business and sometimes business to consumer. But I think lately we had a conversation with the group of Mars, and it was about these last mile delivery services. And you know that you can think as a business to business company that you're not willing to change your experience and your service level or your products. But you and I as a consumer also experience Uber and Uber Eats. So the threshold and the quality of services is already, the bar is set by those kind of companies.
So our expectations actually change while being a consumer.
Yeah.
So, and then we're entering in our B2B role, and it stays there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it's also complicated with B2B, because when you look at B2C, you might be the one person who decides to acquire the bike and who will also use the bike. But when you look at business to business, also in procurement, somebody will decide about a product or a service, somebody will do contracting, and another person will be the user. So it's also a little bit more complicated, though.
Yeah, so yeah, there's always more than just one target group.
Right.
Okay, next question. What is your vision for the predominant business model in 5 to 7 years? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've been puzzled about this question a lot. So we put the business model shift book together and we studied all those models. And I thought, are current or existing companies able to make that shift, or will shifts only come from companies who initiate those shifts, right?
What is the answer to that question? Do you know?
Yeah, so I don't see at the moment, you see few companies who are able to make that shift. And now they need to, so they will do that. So when you look at that care company, you have this visionary board member who says, hey, I would like to take the initiative and feel that we need to change. And for example, the company like Netflix, who was used to ship around DVDs and now is into the streaming business. And they won from the blockbusters who did not understand that game or played it in a different fashion. So if you look at the next few years to come, when you understand that this value creation is done by the matching supply and demand, then that's the way to look forward at these specific services and concepts. So it's more digitalized, and matching will be done much easier and faster. So in terms of supply chains, that's going to change for sure.
Wow. I think, dear viewer, if you just watched also the talk from Claudia Krommenel, and you combine it with this talk from you, Patrick, then I think you have a lot of answers already. You need to combine those talks. So please look back. If you haven't watched both sessions yet, do so, because you might learn a lot from that.
I'll give you one example. Kees Kruithof, who now runs Live Kindly, he says, he used to work at Unilever, he was a top executive. He said, I would like to take the cow and the animal out of this supply chain. So he's now into plant-based ingredients and plant-based brands. And that's something we find hard to grasp, right?
Yeah, but it's also about setting a clear goal. So his goal was really clear. We need to get out the cow in this whole journey. Yeah. Love that. So last question, because we need to wrap it up. I'm so sorry. Last question from Chris Breedveld. Thank you so much for asking your question in the Q&A tab, Chris. Why is SaaS accepted as a service, but for other commodities, it takes much more time to be accepted?
Yeah, I think that could be that the different value is not perceived so much. For example, if you take BMW has started this subscription model with their cars, and also Volvo did. But when you look at a lease price for such a car, then the price difference with a subscription model is not that big. It will only be big if you could take out the car driver, which is a costly thing, and then it will go down. So if the value of the problem that is solved is not that big, I think that's something that you need to look into to understand if this is not. And the other thing, what I also see is there's so much you can take as subscriptions as a person and as a business, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So your advice would still be go back to your value proposition, have a look at your value, and make the value as big as possible in order to make the biggest impact.
Yeah. For example, if you look at a beer subscription model, okay, are you consuming beer at the same time in the same? Many ideas have been introduced also by Heineken, and it was not really taking off, getting access to mass market.